So is this like a general perception in the West that the June 30th, we call it revolution, you call it...
Coup d'etat.
A coup d'etat.
Yeah.
Or you call the 3rd of July coup d'etat, and you call the 30th of June,
well, it's a problem.
Insurgency.
We're getting into nomenclature, but anyway, the army seizes power from and it was a gradual process.
No, I'm still talking before the army seizes power, when people were out on the streets. Yeah. What do you call that? We call it revolution. You call it.
I'm not going to call it a revolution. I will have a popular uprising of some kind. I'm fully happy to accept that there was plenty of people on the streets, not nearly as many as was reported, I guess. Okay. I don't believe the figure. Was it 30 million touted around?
Not nearly as many. Okay, let's not fall into the trap of the game of figures. 30, 20, 15 and all this, because, I mean, somebody somewhere with a big, nice satellite probably has the count more or less close by. But, I mean, when we see it from television cameras, we'll not really get that count as we want. But if we compare figures in 2013, June 30th, and the figures of people out in 2011, you've seen television, you've seen pictures. Which was bigger?
I'm not going to make that judgment.
You're not going to make the judgment?
No, I don't like to make statements which I don't feel confident or have the knowledge to make.
Okay. It's just because the question that I had in mind was, I see the pictures here and I see the pictures there, and I see that the numbers in 2013 were by far larger than the numbers in 2011, by far. Whether you want to call them 30 million, 50, 20, that's not the issue, but I mean, it's just the comparison, the analogy, this is why I'm asking. People did not want a regime. I know that you've met with many of the leaders or the spokespeople of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they have their own point of view as well to try and pass on to you. What is the point of view that they had that convinced you that they were right, other than it was...
Look, I don't say they're right, by the way, at all. If I was Egyptian, I don't believe I would vote for the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay.
What I simply think is that they won a democratic election, and that the deal you do with a democratic election is the winner stays in office for the allocated time.
Even if the winner changes the constitution overnight?
Absolutely. I don't accept that they did enough to make themselves illegitimate, and I think there were many problems, and again, I'm not an expert on this, with the Egyptian judiciary and courts. We're seeing this now, perhaps, with some of the judgments against the...
we'll come to that.
Yeah.
That's an important bit, because I want to know...
So I feel sympathy with Mr. Morsi in trying to deal with the courts, which don't seem to me to have been as independent as they should have been.
Okay, so this is why... So you would accept a prime minister elected in the UK that comes in, first thing he does is change the constitution.
Well, we did have that. We had that with Mr. Blair.
Okay.
That's more or less the first thing he did. And he went on doing it. Now, as it happens, I'm an opponent of Mr. Blair.
Okay.
But I never argued that because of his constitutional meddling that he had lost the right to be prime minister.
Yeah, you just opposed him, but he did not lose...
Yeah, I mean, he did some terrible things. He abolished the post of Lord Chancellor.
Okay.
800 years old post, the height of the British Constitution. And even though I detested that, I did not use that to argue that there should be a coup d'etat or something and remove him from office.
Abolishing the post of Chancellor, which is, of course, the Chancellor...
Lord Chancellor, which is a legal post.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not like if Mr. Blair had gone and said, well, from now on, whatever I say can never be opposed. My decrees... I mean, Henry VIII didn't do that.
I think you...
Mr. Morsi did that.
I think I accept that what Mr. Morsi did was A, clumsy, and B, a mistake, because you can date the collapse in his popularity from that moment.
Okay.
I do believe that there was justification for it because the courts were not treating him with proper fairness, were not allowing him to govern, and that the deep state was not allowing him to govern. But nevertheless, I think he made a mistake. But I do not think that
he should have been deposed.
Yes.
Okay, let me go to the bits where I interrupted you, where you expressed dissatisfaction with the rule of court about the death penalties that were passed.
It's very shocking for the outside.
I just don't want to seem like I wanted to avoid discussing it. So what did you want to say about that?
Simply that it's very, very important, not just for Egypt, but for all of us, that Egypt is part of the full comity of nations. And it's very, very important for whoever wins the election campaign that they will say it's Field Marshal Sisi, that he is seen as a man of honor and integrity and not as some pariah ruler. And the way in which political activists, as I see them, are being sentenced to death simply for being involved in politics at the moment, that's how I see it, and I'm not...
I haven't said anything. I'll comment after you finish.
Yes.
I want you to complete that.
It is, and the way in which journalists are being held in Egypt for practicing the job of journalism. And by the way, I'm not just talking about the Al Jazeera journalists, I'm talking about all the local journalists who are held, are things which make Egypt look in a very bad light. It is essential that we understand life's bumpy, there are ups and downs, but that Egypt is a great stable state with a fabulous set of values which it transmits to the region and to the outside world, which enables the economy to grow, tourism to return, and that is, and part of that, what looks to me like barbarity of the legal process, the misuse of the legal process, these sentences of people to death, is very, very troubling.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask questions here? You said death penalties against activists. Where are those death penalties against the activists? We're talking about the 560 to... But none of them was a political activist.
No, who were they then?
They were people who were accused of violence against burning and killing and so on.
None accused of.
Okay, yeah, I mean, but
I think again, I'm not.
I don't have a problem about you doubting even the judicial order, but the fact that there are things that are related to the political activists, that some of them who have gone against the law of demonstrations, and these have taken 2 or 3 years of imprisonment, and many people in Egypt are against that rule. But we're mixing here two different orders of the court. One of them that relates to the death penalties, which many people as well in Egypt are against, and those that are against the activists, which are the 2 or 3. You are aware that there are 2 different stories.
Yes, I'm aware there are 2, but I may not be on top of all of the details. Nevertheless, what it looks to me from outside is that there is an attempt by the state, in collusion with the judiciary, to label people who are political opponents of the regime as in some way terrorists, and accuse them of acts of violence which may well be confected. Certainly, by labelling people from the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorists, you're simply stating that their political actions are acts of terror, when they're not. They're legitimate acts of political opposition.
Including violence on the streets?
Now, of course, violence on the streets, every state has a duty to maintain the rule of law. But in that case, I would love to see the state investigate much more actively the mass slaughter, mainly carried out, I understand, by the police, against people who weren't carrying guns, which followed on from the coup d'etat in July.
How do you know that they were not carrying guns?
Well, the accounts I have read very strongly suggest that these were these unprovoked attacks. But again, if you can provide proof, that was not the case. But there were the very, very shocking events which occurred.
I'm not trying to provide proof. I'm just trying to find out your point of view. I mean, I remember in London when the Tamil had gone into sit-ins.